You might have thought that the Elon Musk and Twitter saga was over, but it looks like we're heading toward a climax. As the two work desperately to hammer out a deal before October 28, Musk made a controversial announcement that has tanked Twitter shares. In this video, we'll talk about what this means for Twitter, and we discuss this recent trend of rich people snapping up all the social media platforms. First up, a lot will change at Twitter if Musk has his way. The Tesla and SpaceX mogul told prospective investors that once he gets a hold of Twitter's reins, he'll be moving to slash 75% of the jobs at the company. That's a massive workforce cut, and you could only imagine what happened next at the stock exchange. Twitter shares had been taking a pretty massive beating already since this whole mess began, and this announcement caused the prices to fall by 5 cents to $49.89. Even if you set aside the humanitarian issue of all those lost jobs, this move doesn't even make financial sense for Musk. According to Dan Ives, an analyst at Wedbush, Twitter probably did need some job cuts, but what's been proposed here is too much. As far as he's concerned, cutting costs can only take him so far in terms of growing the company. We're really curious as to what Musk thinks this is supposed to accomplish, as investors definitely aren't impressed. Twitter was quick to reassure their staff that they shouldn't fear for their jobs. Not too much anyway. The fact is that, as I've stated, Twitter was in the need of job cuts. They had plans in place to slash $800 million off their payroll, with a staff reduction of around 25%. So while it isn't like Twitter is going to spike the unemployment rate, a lot of people would have ended up without jobs even if the acquisition fell through. Now, whatever the case may be, Musk's acquisition is far from a done deal. According to the courts in Delaware, Musk and Twitter have a rapidly approaching deadline of the 28th of October to hammer out a deal for the acquisition. Twitter has had to deal with a lot of grief from the world's most mercurial billionaire, and they're not interested in making things easy for him. The more Musk drags things out, the more danger there will be to the share price. And since Musk agreed to an amount based on the prices of individual shares, this will lead him to spend even more money than Twitter is worth. But beyond that, there have been grumblings that the White House is considering a national security review of this venture. There are concerns that entities acting on behalf of foreign governments are funding the acquisition, and Musk may court the support of people like Saudi investor Prince Al-Walid Al Saud and companies like Qatar Holding and crypto exchange Binance. He also didn't do himself any favors by threatening to cut Starlink's satellite internet support in Ukraine, or by trying his own hand at foreign policy between Ukraine and Russia. Sure, the White House has publicly denied these review claims, but these things aren't supposed to happen out in public. The expressed concerns are totally real, so we'd hope that they're investigated. If you were concerned about what Elon Musk could mean for the future of the world's premier social network, don't be, we guess. Moving on, Elon Musk isn't the only rich guy fighting for a spot in the social media game. It seems like the conservative elite is taking a big interest in the world's social networks, and they're either trying to buy their way into the competition or setting up their own companies to do so. One example of this is the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, who set up a social platform called Truth Social in the wake of his defeat in the 2020 elections. Since he was banned from his beloved Twitter in the wake of the Capitol attacks of January 6, Trump decided to go his own way and set up a platform where freedom of speech is guaranteed. While the Truth app is still banned on the Google Play Store, a decent number of people have worked around restrictions to hop onto the service. However, the numbers are hardly of concern to the biggest platforms. Another recent example is Kanye West. The rapper has recently been taking a turn to the conservative side of the political spectrum. Seems like right-wing political personality Candace Owens wants to take advantage of this situation, as she has convinced Ye to buy the platform Parler from her husband. Parler was one of the first of these conservative free speech platforms, and it got caught up in the story of the January 6 attacks. Though the platform has bled a lot of its users, Kanye seems to think he has the spark to revive Parler. What could the motivations behind these moves be? Where has this trend come from, and why? The only reason you're hearing about Twitter so much right now is that it's the biggest social media platform in the world that isn't owned by an ultra-rich person. Not yet anyway. While Kanye's buyout of Parler is barely worth commenting on, Musk is definitely looking to join the ranks of Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos as wealthy social media owners. Zuckerberg's Meta is still one of the biggest companies in the world, and Facebook is still a dominant social network. But even bigger for Meta these days is the reach they have through Instagram and WhatsApp, which are considered the standard for their genres of social media. In fact, Meta was big enough to crush its competitor, Snap. If you think about it, Mark Zuckerberg became rich because he invented the idea of social media. Jeff Bezos, meanwhile, has made his own acquisitions of platforms platforms. Most famously, he acquired Goodreads in order to use it as an extension of Amazon's book business, their bread and butter since the beginning. The social media landscape has always been dominated by the wealthiest people, and YouTube and Twitter were the biggest exceptions to that rule. Even if it doesn't seem like Meta and Amazon are leaning on the scale as much as you might expect, that could change at any time. But why is it that the richest people in the world are so keen on social networks? Let's look at some recent events to answer that question. The role of social media platforms has grown rapidly in elections over the past decade or so. It has always been important to a degree, but the big election that proves this point is the 2016 presidential election in the United States. In the wake of Trump's victory, a flurry of investigations proved Facebook had been manipulated in loads of ways to engineer a win for Trump. The biggest player in the scandal was Cambridge Analytica, which harvested data from Facebook and delivered it to presidential hopefuls Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. They also had a hand in influencing the outcome of the 2016 Brexit referendum, in which it turned out that vast swaths of the UK population didn't even understand what the European Union was and what their country's role was in it. Another example is our controversial era of cancel culture. People have figured out that when the justice system can't be relied on to hold the most powerful people in the world accountable, they can use social media to turn them into pariahs. Some of the most tenured and powerful figures of Hollywood were cast out of their ivory towers this way. Even though cancel culture can sometimes have collateral damage, people like Elon Musk have been noticing this, and they're salivating over the kind of power they could wield. Finally, the truth is, people like Musk don't care as much about freedom of speech as they say. Their actual goal in owning these platforms is to control the narrative around various issues. A pretty blatant example of this is Parler and Truth, the platforms that supposedly promote freedom of speech. But it's totally possible to get booted from those platforms if your speech isn't the sort of speech members of those communities want to hear. So much for freedom of speech, huh? Kanye's decision to buy Parler does have some interesting timing. He is currently banned from Instagram and Twitter for posting anti-Semitic content, though Piers Morgan was able to wring an apology out of him for the DeathCon tweet. He is probably tired of working around the limitations imposed by these platforms on his speech. If he owns Parler, no one can stop him from saying and doing what he wants over there. What makes Elon Musk an even more insidious social platform owner is that he's a lot more ambitious than Kanye West or even Donald Trump. After all, he became famous because he genuinely believed he could bring us life on Mars. Unlike fellow tech mogul Mark Zuckerberg, Musk has a voice, and he wants it to be heard with no one to stop it. So it's a good thing that Musk won't actually be able to buy Twitter, right? That's it for today's video. Do you think Musk will actually go forward with cutting 3/4 of the workforce at Twitter? And in general, is it a good idea for people like Elon Musk to have access to the world's largest social media platforms? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.